Welcome to the Macross Delta Recap Show. Episode 1. This is EXO with Celia Rose, our resident magical girl. Say hi, Celia.
Hi.
And Chad, owner and procurer of the Macross Mecha Manual. Say hi, Chad.
Do I have to?
Yes.
Hello.
All right, so let's cut to the chase. We just saw episode 1,
Yeah.
and it's mostly just like the preview episode from New Year's, episode point 89. Celia, let's go with you first. What are your thoughts on episode 1?
So this episode basically it tightened up the editing, which I liked a lot more. I watched the pilot and the first broadcast episode side by side today and could see the points where they were deviating. So it actually took some time to kind of go back to certain sequences to see just what was different between them. And there's about 3 minutes of brand new footage towards the very end. And they were able to tighten the editing in order to fit it. And I think that it benefited from that because instead of waiting until the last 10 minutes of the episode to introduce the conflict and the whole deal with the var syndrome and the big battle with Walkure, you get it about probably about 10 or 12 minutes into the episode. So I think that it moves faster, which works for it. And we get our character motivations and we're introduced to a lot of the Delta Squadron a lot sooner instead of taking a long time to bring everyone in, which I think is why it felt like last time there was a lot more people just because they were taking so long to bring them in and give them a brief introduction to everybody.
Yeah.
For the most part, though, a lot of the footage was the same. I did
Mm-hmm.
notice, though, that with the songs that they chose, though, that they are different. The cut for Love, Halation, the War is different. They used the full single in episode 1 instead of just the short version that they had in the pilot. And
Mm-hmm.
they also used the full version of Ikenai Borderline. But what I
Yeah, they did. They went all the way through with it.
Yeah, and it was really cool. But what I noticed especially, and I had to kind of layer these videos over each other so I could hear it better, but the song that activates the VAR syndrome is different in both episodes.
Was it? I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so I had seen it mentioned in because I rejoined the one of the discussion forums I used to be on back when
Mm-hmm.
during Frontier days, and
Uh-huh.
someone mentioned that the song was different. Watching the episode by itself, I didn't notice it, but when I layered them on top of each other, they're actually in different tones, and it's shorter in the broadcast episode. But I like it personally in the pilot because I think that when it sounds kind of like it's in a minor key, so it sounds a little bit more eerie,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a little bit longer, but the lyrics are just about the same.
Cool. Yeah, it was definitely a tighter episode. They skipped a lot of the characters and they went all the way through continuously with Freya and Hayate, I think. And then
Mm-hmm.
they started introducing other people. Chad, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought that this version of the episode was a lot better. As Cecilia said, it tightened up the editing, not just the editing, but also the through line for the episode. There was, like you mentioned, Alex, there was a lot more of Freya and Hayate, and just like throughout the entire episode from beginning to end, right? Whereas
Yeah.
the pilot episode felt a lot like it was trying to introduce too much too fast, and it just all
Hmm.
came out of a jumble, and
Yeah.
also just impacted the other storylines as well, especially our three primary characters. And Mirage felt like she was introduced a lot later, but in this new version of the episode, she is still introduced later, but it feels a lot more natural. And a lot more relaxed as well. It's not so the episode is not so frenetic, and it's not trying to hit you with so many different things. It feels just more like you can ease into the episode instead of just throwing you in the midst of everything and hitting you with as much as it can. So I really appreciated that. There's also because of the added sequences at the end, it feels much more like a traditional Macross show, to be honest.
Yeah.
The initial preview episode felt very much like the action was tacked on. Like I was watching another type of show, and then we had some Macross action tacked up, like tacked on the end. Like it was like, oh, here's an afterthought. Here's some cool mecha action for you to enjoy for like about 5 or 6 minutes, and then we're going to end the episode. But in
Mm.
this new episode, this new version, I guess we're going to call this the broadcast version, I guess, of episode 1.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it feels much more like, in line with other Macross shows. There's a lot more mecha action in it, including the chance for our lead pilot, Hayate, to get himself inside a Valkyrie and do his thing, which he
Right.
does in a most entertaining fashion. Actually,
Oh
um,
yeah.
I was watching and I noticed that some people, after they had watched the episode, there was a reaction on some of the Facebook pages, and I think the some of the forums, the anime forums as well, that Hayate's dance moves with the VF 171 Nightmare Plus that he was piloting reminded a lot
Yeah.
of people of Muhammad Ali, and I was thinking the exact same thing when I saw it by first on my own, just watching the moves and stuff like that, almost that scissoring that he does with his legs and feet and everything. It just like it felt so much like the old magic of Ali, just dancing up a storm in the ring, and I was really taken with it. So I think they managed to this broadcast version of the episode managed to hit quite a few good spots for me that the original episode did not. So yeah, I kind of warmed to it a little bit more than I thought I would. So yeah, that's my initial reaction anyway.
See, I didn't recognize it as Muhammad Ali as much as it reminded me of when you're rocking and breakdancing at the very beginning.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I thought of. Of course, I don't know very much about Muhammad Ali, so I probably wouldn't recognize that off the top of my head. But that's what I thought of was because I have a lot of friends who are b-boys and that do breakdancing, and so it
Mhm.
reminded me of that when he was doing that fancy footwork. It was really cool. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, that was a surprise. But wasn't what did you guys think about the similarities to the ending of the first episode of SDF and Frontier? Is that a little too much, or because somebody's brought that up in the Macross Delta page?
I don't
The
necessarily
ending.
think it's too bad.
The part where he picks up Freya and he's flying, and then just like
Oh,
Minmay, and then just like Alto picks up Ronk.
though they use it in Delta much more as a cliffhanger that rather than because SDF didn't end like that. It ended differently, but it had that sequence, with Minmay and falling in the air and Hikaru trying to rescue her in the D.
Yeah,
But that was not the end of the episode.
yeah.
But
It
yeah,
was
so
like
it's a
towards the
little
center.
bit used a little bit different here. Used more for more dramatic tension and effect to end the episode was just like, oh God, what's going to happen, kind of thing.
But whoever commented on it said it was okay in Frontier because it was an homage, but then in Delta
It becomes a
it felt
trope.
like it becomes a trope. But from what I saw, it was actually part of the story because there was an additional thing to it where he becomes integrated with the machine. It was very Aquarian, where he's like flying naked and then he's looking at Freya and she's in a certain zone also where she's kind of like floating in that space. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what
And
you're
then he
saying
gets
for
knocked out of
sure.
it.
There was definitely some sort of like supposed to be some sort of metaphysical aspect to the fact that they were in this situation either together or just like achieving some sort of mystical reaction at the same time.
Hmm.
I'm not sure exactly what that was.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get a little bit more insight to it later. But I know what you mean. Yeah, it's definitely that. That was definitely present in there for sure.
I kind of agree that it's too much, but at the same time, it's forgivable because now it's part of the story. And why did that happen? So,
Mm.
Celia, what do you think?
I thought it was a nice touch, especially because after the pilot episode came out, there were a lot of people who were saying that this wasn't truly a Macross show. And it was coming
Hmm.
from a lot of people who were at least claiming to be fans of like SDF and older versions of Macross.
Yeah.
And I think having that particular sequence, because the first thing I did think of was Frontier, and then
Hmm.
I've only seen like maybe the first couple episodes of SDF, and that was one scene I remember is Minmay
Hmm.
in the arm. I did think it was funny though. I kept seeing comments on discussion boards about how I think it's the 171, the particular Valk that
Yeah.
he's flying, isn't supposed to have its
Mhm.
arm out while it's
Oh,
in
when it's in
when it's
Growok?
yeah, like not Gerwalk, but I think it was when it's in its plane mode.
Oh,
I think
huh.
I saw more people commenting on that than the repetitiveness of the scene. I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
pretty funny that people were kind of focusing on that a little bit, at least on the discussion boards I was looking at.
I find that's an odd complaint. We've seen so much Macross where there's been Valkyries in various stages of transformation all the time. Like in the original, the movie, like not only sorry the series, but the movie itself also had like these weird sort of hybrid configurations where you'd
Yeah.
have a half Gerwalk, half fighter transformation, where you'd have the legs down for the Valkyrie, but the arms would be still folded back. And then you also had the Gerwalk with more like surface, uh, sorry, control surfaces out, where you'd have both arms and both legs out, right, and the cockpit forward, but then you'd have the rear stabilizer, vertical stabilizers would be unfolded, and the jetpack would be folded flat
Mm-hmm.
rather than folded up and stowed away, right? And that's always
Yeah.
been the case with Macross has always done stuff like that. In Frontier, I can remember specifically one sequence where Mikhail was piloting his sniper version of the 25, where he has one arm that comes out while in fighter mode or something like that.
Uh-huh.
It's right before the attack on Gallia 4 or something like that. I'm not sure, but it was similar. So we've seen this like over and over again, and I'm not really sure why anybody would have that sort of complaint about the mecha being in various stages of transformation. That's something we've seen again and again and again throughout all the series. Yeah.
Like, I don't know enough about each of the Valkyries to be able to say, yeah, it can't have the arm out. But I figure it's like Transformers, where because it's a transformable vehicle, you can have various stages of that transformation. So it wouldn't be a
Yeah.
big deal to just have one arm out. And it's just dramatic effect. Like, even if you have to think about it, like, would this be possible if this were a real live vehicle? I don't know, but it's really dramatic when she's singing in the hand
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
171 while Hayate is piloting
Yeah.
it for the first time. It's really cool. It's a really cool scene.
And also, I mean, let me tell you about Macross fans. This is like a secret, and hopefully nobody's listening. But
Now. It's only
the
the
first
second episode.
time,
It's only the second episode. Don't start like destroying what little fan base we have.
the, I'm just saying, like, the first time anybody ever said that this isn't a Macross show, it's probably Macross 2, the first episode. You know what I mean? It's like
For sure.
this isn't SDF. And then they see Macross 7, Macross Plus. Maybe they like Macross 0, the first episode, but everything compared to SDF is never gonna measure.
So I do think it was interesting that with Freya in particular, when her Nunun lights up. So in the pilot, it lights up and she exclaims like, "Oh my god, it lit up!" And then she goes and sings and like runs towards Valkyrie and sings with them. But
Hmm.
this time after that happened, like after her Nunun lit up, she
Hmm.
says, "Time to show some Windermere power." And
Yeah,
Windermere is the name of the kingdom where Keith and Bogue and all the other pilots are coming
the
from.
knights.
Yeah, the knights of the Kingdom of the Wind are from Windermere, and I'd kind of already suspected she was from Windermere because she had this
Hmm.
because like Bogue has kind of the similar thing where his looks like a yellow sparkle that sticks out of the side of his head, and when he got
They all do.
yeah, and when he got angry, his would light up, and hers lit up when she got really excited by the music,
Hmm.
and that was really interesting that this time they included that particular line,
Yeah,
and then showing the power that that has. The scene was really cool, anyways, where Hayate and Freya are flying through the sky. Um,
yeah,
while she's singing and she's got sparkles going everywhere, and Hayate is really feeling this kind of transcendent experience, but I'm wondering how much of that was affected him because of Freya's power. Like if it was something that was making him experience this thing that she was experiencing, because she keeps talking about flying on the wind and saying, I can do
yeah.
it if I
That's
fly on the
true.
wind. And when they get hit is when the illusion is shattered.
Hmm.
So that makes me really curious what kind of power that we'll be seeing from the Knights of the Kingdom of the Wind, just based on what Freya can do. And then the varying degrees of power. I still think Scarface Pilot's gonna die. I'm still convinced he's
He's
gonna
he's the
die.
top of the list of your Deadpool.
Yeah, yep. He's at the very top of my list for my Deadpool. He's the mentor, and he gets mentioned by name, and then he says, "Oh, don't call me master. I'm just a regular pilot." So
And he's not on any of the character sheets.
nope, that's why I think he's gonna.
Spoiler.
That's why I think he's gonna die still.
Yeah.
But
Well,
no,
let's just count him out now.
overall, this episode basically took everything that I already liked about the pilot and
Hmm.
made me like it more and presented it in
Yeah.
a way that I liked better than the first time around.
Yeah, I liked it more also. It was just really like more frenetic. I don't know, man. I was feeling it. I was feeling the Valkyr, the energy. So
Yeah, because like Mikumo clearly has some kind of power. Like I didn't notice, but you know the scene where she makes the Walkure like, well, I call it it's like the West Side symbol. Like she makes her fingers into a W, and then
yeah.
she like presses it against the Zentradi's helmet while she sings.
Hmm.
There's a purple flash when she does that. So I don't know how much of it is her voice. I don't know how much of it is something maybe like Ronka. Like Ronka had all the little microorganisms living inside her, and she was part Vajra, so she was able to connect with them, and they responded that way. Or if it's like a fold quartz thing. I mean, they don't really give a lot of info on the tech that Valkyrie uses, so it could be anything at this point.
Uh, Sorry, people. So I guess this is a magical girl show
Woohoo!
officially. Oh yeah.
Not yet. Not yet. Knowing Macross, they will probably give some sort of explanation at some point,
Yeah. True.
but it won't be something that they dwell upon. Speaking of tech, I noticed that this version of the episode, excluded the sequence where one of the VF-31 Siegfrieds uses their some sort of projector to recharge the multi drones.
Oh yeah,
That's
I
true.
noticed that too.
Yes, that was definitely not included in this episode. Also, one of the other things I noticed is they really shortened Freya's stowaway section of the
They
episode.
did.
It was
Hmm.
very, very much cut down. We got one shot of her inside the ship crawling down a ladder, and two guys on the ship trying to find her and saying that there was a stowaway so that the audience knew what was happening. But after that, nothing. There's nothing of her inside the ship. There's nothing of her looking at the planet outside of one of the windows in the cargo hold. And there's also nothing of her until she's already been, her crate that she's been stowed away in has already been stacked. And then she hears the music. That's the first time that we see that. And to be honest, I think that's all we needed because that was enough.
Yeah,
Um,
it looked like they used that scene before to introduce Al Shahal because when
Mm.
Freya like goes down and she takes the bite of the apple and she's all like, "Runu, look, it's Al Shahal." And
yes,
this
yeah,
time they just decided to cut to the planet with a title on it that says Al Shahal. And
Shahal,
I
yeah.
think that worked a lot better.
I think so as well. Yeah, I think everybody understands that they have to be somewhere, and so
Hmm.
even if some viewers didn't exactly get the name of the planet the first time around, it will probably be on everybody's mind until it's mentioned again in like second episode, third episode, that sort of thing. So I think the audience will be fine picking up on where they're located, even if they didn't get it in the first episode.
Now, Celia, you mentioned the apple. I'm wondering how important that is to the story because during that first scene again with the guy that was affected by the bar syndrome, the first thing he does is bite the apple. He was already
Oh,
affected.
that's true.
I'm just saying they bothered to animate it and then show it, like
And then
he bites the
Freya
apple
eating the
and he walks
apple.
out. Yeah.
Whoa.
So I'm wondering how important those very distinct apples are to the story. Maybe they're not, maybe it's just
Maybe it's a cute way to reference Sharon apple.
maybe. There
Yeah.
you go. Do we notice any more differences between the pilot episode and this one?
There's no dramatic dropping of the coffee tumbler.
You know, I saw that. That is very weird that they cut that out.
I think it was okay that they cut it out, but it was kind of like, oh, that
Pretty
wasn't
sure it
fair.
was just, yeah, pretty sure it was pretty is dead space the first time around. So
No,
I thought it was very impactful. What did you guys
it
think?
was that dramatic drop, just slow
Yeah.
motion. Boom.
I was
Oh.
not impressed with it the first time, and I'm not sorry that it's gone.
Oh, I think it's interesting on the for the Blu-ray that comes out. I think it comes out in July.
Which will have English subs.
Woohoo! Has subs on it, but that one has an
Yeah.
extended version of episode one, and I'm kind of wondering if it's going to be the pilot episode plus the new stuff from the broadcast version,
Hmm.
and that's what's going to make it quote unquote extended. It's just by
I
taking everything they already have and putting it in one cut.
I think so. It's very weird, and Chad mentioned this and when we were talking earlier this week about the show, that it's very weird that they animate something all the way and then leave it in the cutting room floor. That would happen a lot in a live action of a movie or a TV show, but
Yeah, not exactly a lot, but it would be more common
yeah, it's
animation.
very strange for
In
animation.
animation, your budget is you have to be a lot more careful with your budget because every second is a lot of money on the screen. It's a lot of effort to animate everything. So most animation productions do extensive storyboarding and also just pre-editing to a certain extent, making sure everything is tight and is going to work and fit together, the way it should. And
Yeah.
then they go through the animation process because, yeah, it's a lot of money and a lot of time and effort.
You wouldn't put in stuff that really won't add to the story. You know what I mean? Those were stuff that they cut out and worked, I think, a lot better without them. It was such a tighter episode,
Mm-hmm.
and that New Year's Eve preview was kind of slow. Now that I've seen this one,
Yeah, putting the two side by side and watching them, like trying to watch them at the same time, the New Year's Eve episode came off a little bit more as a hot mess than than the new one did. So I'm
yeah,
really glad that they did tighten that up.
which we already thought
Yeah.
in the when
Oh,
the
there
when
was
we
no
first watched it.
question. Yeah, there was no
Yeah,
question. When I saw that preview episode, that was one of the first things I was criticizing about it.
yeah,
And I
that was
was
my
actually surprised that more people didn't come forward with that same criticism because I just thought it was pretty much a disaster as far as editing and pacing. It was all over the place and just threw so much at you and didn't seem to have much sort of flow. A lot of stuff just seemed to
yeah.
happen because it was happening rather than, a good narrative that was carrying the audience along with the episode. But
Mm.
this new broadcast version of the episode is exactly what I was hoping for with this re-editing. It's just much tighter, much better, just better flow. Just it grabs you and carries you along. You're not feeling so disjointed as you're watching it, and there's also just a lot less in it to tear you away from the A story, which is our three main characters, right? There's
Yeah.
far less distractions. It's far more coherent, just excellent all around.
Speaking of our main three characters, when and this is talking about the sub, not the subs, not the animation itself. When Hayate comes out from getting his check, he says, "Fuck her." Is that a direct translation of what he says?
I wish my vocab was good enough to tell you whether or not that was true.
Because I don't remember that from the first time I saw
Cause well,
the episode.
GG in when they subbed the New Year's Eve special used
Uh-huh.
fuck very liberally. I'm really looking forward to when he tells her that her timing was off in that formation, because he pointed it out
Yeah,
when
he
when
says
he's
one
watching and
one
he
Valkyrie is off.
yeah, and it was hers. And once he makes the connection that it's
Yeah.
hers, I'm just waiting for that moment where he's all like, "Your timing's off," and then she gets all defensive about it. Like, no, I'm already seeing tsundere tendencies in Mirage, and I kind of like it, but I also tend to like the tsundere pilot characters. Exhibit A being Asuka Langley from Evangelion.
Mhm.
So I'm just waiting for it. It's gonna be funny.
So do you think Hayate is gonna be Freya's pilot when they both get integrated into the Valkyr
Um,
group?
probably. It seems like they've already got pretty established, or at least Kaname and Messer seem like they're pretty established as a
Yeah,
pair and their
yeah.
teamwork when they're working together. I haven't seen it with the other pilots just yet. Mikumo just kind of does
Well,
her own thing.
Ray and Mustang, Chuck Mustang, are seems like they're also paired together.
Yeah,
So, but they don't like it. It didn't seem like Ray was pretty happy about that
I feel I
situation.
feel like Mikumo and Mirage are supposed to be partnered, but
Hmm.
Mikumo does not like her. Because remember when she's undercover and they're asking about
Yeah.
like where's Lady M, and she makes that comment where she's like, "Oh well, I wouldn't be able to be out and about if she was here." And Mirage is on the phone desperately trying to get a hold of Mikumo. So
Hmm.
I just color palette wise, I think that they're paired together, but also because of that scene in particular, that Mikumo has to work with Mirage but doesn't necessarily like to.
Who is Mirage piloting?
Mirage Mirage was in by herself,
Oh,
and
I didn't notice
she
that.
was in the purple VF-31 Siegfried.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Was it a single seater, Chad?
Oh, I can't remember. Sorry.
Ah, God, why did we get this guy?
I will
Yeah, I know.
I will pull
Slacking
up
here.
the episode. Let me look. They all look like two-seaters.
Yeah, I've never noticed that.
I think there's so many characters too in at least part of the Valkyrie unit that you could have all sorts of different pairings or all sorts
Yeah.
of opportunities for intrusions upon the love triangle and whatnot, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
could have like easily one of the pilots could be like, the next Kaifun or something like that, right? It was, yeah, he comes along and just, just at the moment when somebody thinks their relationship is going good, some third party comes in. It's just like, what's going on here, right? And yeah, I think there's plenty of opportunity for that as well. So I don't think they're going to cement too many of the pairings right away, just to make sure that there's enough opportunity to do something in the future.
I never really realized how they invented the term cock block for Kaifun. That's true. That's exactly what he did.
He was
Ugh,
one of those guys.
he's one of those
Yeah.
guys.
Huh.
I hate those guys.
I'm really curious though to know what's going to happen next. I
Hmm.
um I can't remember where I read it, but I had read somewhere that at an event for Macross Delta that Kawamori said that the plot is going to take some pretty significant twists and turns just within
Hmm.
the first few episodes, and
Cool.
it was left on such a cliffhanger where
Yeah.
they're falling out of the sky in a burning Valkyrie. Well, it wasn't burning, but you know, and knowing that there are big things coming up because Kawamori said so,
Yeah.
that makes me really curious to know what's going to happen in episode 2. And I know that there's already some information about episode 2 out because it was had a
It was already
theatrical
shown,
release.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it had a theatrical release in
Bastards.
March. And I've been trying so hard to resist the temptation to just read what happens because I'd like to watch it and like it to be fresh. But I also really want to know what
Well,
happens.
I read the spoilers, and Freya goes splat in like the first second of the second episode.
Ah, that's the end.
Oh,
Yeah, that
Those
sounds. That definitely sounds.
triangle resolved.
those 9 discs on Amazon Japan are all just for display. They don't actually mean anything.
Well, Freya's not in the rest of the show.
Ooh.
They Ned Stark does.
Ned Stark.
Don't see that happening.
No, it becomes the magical girl idol show that everyone has been dreading it's going to be.
I see Freya's death happening about as likely as I see this series turning into a very serious Gundam-esque war
Well, that would
drama.
be a dark twist, twisty turn, right?
Actually, a couple things that some final thoughts about the episode that I really want to make sure that we talk about. Um,
Hmm.
did anybody happen to notice that the character animation also seemed a little bit better in this episode? I just maybe I'm just seeing a better copy of the first episode or something like that from the first one that from the preview episode that I viewed, but it just seemed like there were some tiny tweaks to some of the animation, especially around the eyes and mouths of the characters.
Hmm.
They just looked that much better. Especially the last part of the episode when it was all like, at least from our perspective, it was new animation. Seemed like
Uh-huh.
the character animation was exceptionally tight. The whole sequence with Hayate and Freya in the VF 171 Nightmare Plus, just, yeah, it seemed to look really, really good. Very sharp, very excellent. I liked it a lot. Anybody else notice that, or am I just imagining things?
No, no, definitely. It was a lot better visually, not just character-wise, but just like Celia mentioned the first time from the pilot episode, a lot of the mechs and the surfaces of the ships were they had added details, and even like the map in the beginning was, I think it was way too crowded with detail. I like the pilot episode version better, where I could read all the names of the ships and where they were heading. But overall, yeah, I think it was an improvement on how it looked and how it was animated.
Yeah, just I think maybe there was just more opportunity to show some good character artwork or something. Maybe
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking of. but yeah, it was very good. I liked it, and I'm already a fan of the animation style of it. I must admit, this episode also helped to sell that. So yeah, I'm on board for that.
Celia, what did you
I
think?
did notice there was quite a bit of color tweaking too. So like
Mm,
the lines around the eyes were definitely smoothed out. And in the pilot,
hmm
they were a little bumpy looking, like almost
hmm
almost sketchy type of a look.
I
Um,
thought that was on purpose, but now that
yeah,
I see the new version,
yeah, I thought it was on purpose too because it kind of fit in with their character designer's style. But
exactly.
in this one, it's definitely been smoothed out. Um, and they did tweak colors in some scenes where the colors are a bit brighter, like when Hayate is getting fired, the colors are just a little bit more saturated in that sequence. During the battle sequence, I noticed that when the Ragolts are firing, that instead of just being like a blue flash, when bullets are being fired, there's actually like some
Hmm
orange mixed in there. The best alteration is when they added all the textures to the bottom of the big ship at the very beginning. I don't know the name of it. In the pilot episode, it's completely smooth, and you see the underside of it. It's just this big gray ship, and
hmm
the underside has nothing on it. But in the broadcast version, it's covered in lights, and it's got all these windows and different strips where there are moving parts.
Holy cow!
Yeah, it's a huge improvement
Yeah,
over the version.
it's the city section of the new Macross class, or in this
Hmm
case, it might actually be the island class because it looks like it's the much larger version of that same style of ship from the Macross Frontier series. And I wouldn't be
Hmm.
surprised if they used like the same model as the island cluster class as well. So.
Yeah, yeah, definitely looked a lot better.
One of the other things that I wanted to mention too is this new broadcast episode of the first Macross Delta really improved Hayate's character, especially because of the added section at the end. We got to see
Mm.
Hayate having a lot more fun, especially when he's flying and Freya is singing. There's just this palpable sense of joy on the character's face. And the whole section when he was fighting with his dance moves and everything else, it seemed to be very much enjoyable for him, like to be doing that. And I think as a result of that, we, the audience, also got on board with the character. I don't know about the two of you, but when I saw the preview episode of Macross Delta, I found I found Hayate's character almost oppressively apathetic and just unenjoyable at all. I was not impressed, and I figured I was going to have a really hard time getting on board with this character because it just seemed like such a blank, sort of uninspiring character to be following in this. Almost like a trope of the bland, male lead kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
But this new version is much improved, and I think gives him a burst of energy that was much needed, and yeah, started to allow me at least to warm to the character.
Yeah, I think so too. In the pilot episode, he reminded me a little too much of Alto. I mean, Alto's quite flat, to be honest. That's why
Hmm
I'm much more interested in all the other characters but him. And Hayate didn't really only had that moment where he was piloting the loading mech and dancing with it to that song at the very beginning that
Yeah.
really gave us any sort of insight um, him into who he is that isn't just, oh, I got fired, just this really flat apathetic feeling to him.
hmm
And even then it was kind of more of a display of his skills rather than, look, he's having fun doing this. But having that scene at the end where he jumps into the 171 and he even says it's, it can't be that different, as he's hopping in and he quickly gets control, figures out which controls do what, and then he's in it. And I think reaffirming that it's something he likes to do, it's not just something he's good at, but he enjoys doing it also, redeemed him a lot more than without that in the pilot episode.
I can tell you though, from watching Frontier and the first episode of Macross Delta, I don't like dancing robot girls. I didn't like it in the Macross Frontier movie, and I was like watching it this time in this episode. I'm like, I'm not into this. Like,
Oh, the
the
dancing
holographic.
holograms.
Yeah, holographic dancing girls. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, they're so Sharon Apple. That's what I loved in with Cheryl's sequences because they're all
Mhm.
holographic images,
Mhm.
and it reminded me so much of Sharon Apple concerts and Plus that it made me really happy. I don't know what purpose the holograms serve for Walkure in particular, because
Yeah.
they appear within the energy shields that they have.
Yeah.
But we'll see what they do with that. I am curious about Mirage because Kawamori did confirm that she's the granddaughter of Max and Milia,
Yeah.
and mostly I'm interested in finding out whether or not she wants to be a pilot or if she's being a pilot because of her family's reputation.
Yeah.
Because you have Maximilia, and then I think their first daughter was a
Mhm.
pilot too, if I remember right. I haven't seen all of seven, so I can't remember it very clearly. But
Or Milan was definitely not a pilot.
no,
Well, actually, she was.
I don't. I haven't gotten far enough to see whether or not she drives a Valk yet.
Yeah. Milan drives the Max L, and that's a pink Valkyrie with boobs,
Oh yes.
speaker boobs.
One of
I can get behind the idea of a pink Valkyrie. Not so sure about the speaker boobs. I'll have to wait and see for that
one of the
one.
many fine qualities of Macross 7.
Well, that's it's okay because they have a purpose. That's where the sound force comes out of.
Straight from her heart.
Straight from
Yeah.
the heart. Yeah.
Totsugeki love heart. Oh man.
All right. So, do you guys have any more finishing thoughts?
I think that's about it. Especially because so much of the broadcast episode reuses stuff from the pilot.
All right. Well, then let's close it out.
All right.
Where can we find you guys when you're not recording the Macross Delta recap show? Let's start with Celia.
Okay, well, you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Celia Rose Cosplay. And you can find me on Twitter at Planets Twinkle and on
Hmm.
Instagram at It's Celia Rose.
And Chad.
You can contact me at marchingcw@hotmail.com. You can also find me at Facebook at www.facebook.com/Macross Mecha Manual. And of course, I'm also available on various anime message boards, not least of which is Macross World.
Cool. And this is EXO. You could just find me on Facebook at the official Macross World Facebook page or the Macross Delta Facebook page. Or you could tweet at me at Macross Tweet on Twitter. And you guys could just leave any questions or anything you want to discuss on the next show, and we'll look through it.
Yes, please send us
So,
feedback. Send us as much feedback as you can. We definitely appreciate it, especially as most of us, I think, are starting out with this, and we could use some tips on tightening up everything and making sure that it's more enjoyable for everybody.
cool. So we'll see you guys on the Macross Delta episode 2 recap.
Woohoo!
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.